Hi, Reefy Mind. Reggae Radio is in effect, and I have a guest. I'd like you to introduce yourself to me and where you stand here as a citizen of America.
Well, my name is legally Robert Edward Fortune, but I've been publicly calling myself the New Jersey Weed Man for the last 15 years or so. I've been a public advocate of legalization of marijuana, primarily in New Jersey. But about 4 years ago, I packed up. I got fed up with the system, how it was going in New Jersey, the persecution I felt that was subjected to me for being as public as I was, and I packed up and moved to what I call greener pastures here in Los Angeles. And for the last 4 years, I basically came here and I opened up a marijuana temple, a dispensary that I called the Liberty Bell Temple. And until December 13th, I was doing pretty well. And on December 13th, the U.S. Justice Department enacted a little bit of injustice at me and sent the DEA to my dispensary and my home, my bank account, my grow operations, and basically destroyed me, just wiped me out, left me penniless. I went from December 12th being solidly middle class and with a bright future to practically being homeless and penniless on the 13th of December. But it was a result of my case in New Jersey. My case in New Jersey, I went home on a visit. I got to rent a car, and I went and visited my kids and was on my way to a hotel in April of 2010. I brought a pound of marijuana with me. It was still in my luggage. I got pulled over by a state trooper in my rental car, not even a couple hours after I landed, and we searched my car and found my medicine in my luggage, and I got a charge. And I've since been arguing. I pled not guilty, and I've been arguing to the court that the law is wrong and not I. See, what happened was when I came here to California, everything's on my website, njweedman.com. So I became a pretty big cult figure in the marijuana movement based on my website. So people have been following me for years. And what happened was, as my case in New Jersey got a lot of media attention, people were constantly looking at my website and saying, wait a minute, this guy has this case in New Jersey. You're trying to put him in jail for possession of a small amount of marijuana. Yet he's in California. That's where he's living at now. And he sells marijuana every day. And, I was promoting the legalization of marijuana from my website. My temple, Liberty Bell Temple, had its own website, libertybelltemple.com, where I also advocated the legalization of marijuana and pretty much put it on the internet, what was going on here in L.A. And this peed off New Jersey officials. They didn't like the fact that I was making myself into a hero. And they basically called Justice Department and sicked the Justice Department on me out here in L.A. So I call it the politics of pot, and that's basically what happened. And I went, like I said, from on December 12th, 2011, from being solidly middle class with a business, a thriving business on Hollywood Boulevard, a nice bright future, a nice grow room. I was growing my own money to provide for my family. But, I had 17 employees. I wasn't only providing for my family, I was providing for other people's families. And, we're in this economic crisis where it's hard to find jobs. People were working 2 or 3 jobs or no job at all just to survive. And they just knocked 17 people out of jobs based on some goofy moralistic issue that marijuana somehow is dangerous or something.
Now, I read up about you, and you're giving me that point to want to work right beside you if I can to help legalize it throughout America. Now, Scheduled I drug, they say in New Jersey, is marijuana, right?
Well, actually, the federal government calls marijuana a Schedule I drug. Federal government standards and rules, marijuana is a Schedule I drug. And to be a Schedule I drug, one of the things it has to have is no medical value. So the federal government, refuses to acknowledge that marijuana has any medicinal value.
So they basically signed for a rule, a law, and they signed to a lie. They literally, it's a straight lie. It's like, this isn't the truth, but we want it to be the truth, even though it's clearly not true. Right?
Exactly. And that's what I've been making very public about my position. When I come to trial, which my trial is coming April 10th, is the first day of trial, that I'm going to be advocating jury nullification. And what that means is a jury has a right to judge the law as well as the fact. And one of the things I want the jury to do is judge the law. I feel like I'm not wrong. I feel that the law is wrong. I think the jury should be allowed to judge that. And as a fact, the fact of the matter is the law is absolutely a lie. It's absolutely wrong. And most people, more than 50% of Americans do believe that. So for years, I've not only been a marijuana legalization activist, I've been a jury nullification activist. I've been arguing that this is the way we can end our war on us, end our war on pot, end our war on the cannabis consuming communities of America by, if you're charged with a crime, Take it to trial. Take it to the jury and argue as part of your defense that the law is wrong and not you. Present the fact that marijuana has been misclassified as a Schedule I drug. And again, there's going to be someone on a jury who has smoked marijuana. Their brother, their sister, their wife, their husband, somebody smokes marijuana. They know it's not that evil substance, and they have the right to utilize their conscience and say not guilty, in effect, nullifying the law. And I believe that this is how, in fact, it's a fact, that this is how the alcohol prohibition, for instance, was eliminated. This is how, during slavery, the people charged with helping slaves get away were exonerated at trial because people thought that the law was wrong, you know? And throughout American history, jury nullification has been used when a law has gotten to the point where the public no longer accepted it. And that's where we've come with the issue of marijuana and the legalization of marijuana. The prosecution of marijuana defendants is happening more and more. Defendants are arguing that the law is wrong. Juries are finding that the law is wrong, and people are being acquitted. And I think that it should be a national movement
exactly
to use jury nullification to end the war on marijuana. And I'm using my particular case to drum up as much publicity as I can, not only to the issue of legalizing marijuana, but to the issue of jury nullification as a way of doing it, as a method of doing it, as a tool against the government's war on drugs.
April 10th is the first date of your trial. What are your plans before then?
My mission is to drive my weedmobile from Los Angeles to New Jersey. I'm going to take a roundabout way. I'm basically going to drive. I'm going to stop in different cities. And again, I'm going to try to get media attention to not only my case, my impending case, but also to the issue of jury nullification. So my plan is to basically ride Interstate 15 up to 70 and run 70 all the way across the country. So my first stop is going to be in Las Vegas. I'm going to get a little Las Vegas press. Then I'm going to go towards Utah and Denver. I'm going to go to Denver. Again, I have something set up in Denver where basically a media event, Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis. I have an event scheduled in Cincinnati, a pretty big media event. There's two radio stations, and they've already pretty much picked up on me and the issue of jury nullification. They think it's great, and they just can't wait to have me in their studio. In Ohio, they're actually having a several initiatives that are on the ballot out there for the legalization of marijuana in Ohio. So they're going to use that date. I think I'm supposed to be in Cincinnati on March 26th. So they're going to use that date at their radio station to hold a petition signing. Like, not only I'm going to be able to do a meet and greet with different people, and they're going to, the station itself is holding a petition signing. So there should be several hundred people show up at this event. And I think that seems to be the biggest event that's scheduled on my trip across the country.
On your tour?
On my tour. Yeah, exactly. And I keep telling people, just go to my website, njweedman.com, NJ like New Jersey, njweedman.com, and just click on the link about the Weedman's getting ready to take a trip across America. You'll get all the details there and get my itinerary. I'm also going to be having my webcam on all the time. So
good.
At any time, people will be able to log in and, you know, see what I'm doing at any particular time across this trip, across the country. And like I said, I'd probably take about 10, 12 days to get across the country the way I'm going to stop everywhere. And at any time, log in, participate, email me. And, of course, I do need a little support.
How do we help you in your mission?
Well, I have a couple links on my website for direct funding. You know, through PayPal or whatever. You can go to my website and click on the link and you know, send $4.20 if that's all you have. You know, anything helps. But the greatest thing I need as far as support goes are people to spread the message of jury nullification as a weapon in this war on drugs. If the government is if the government is waging a war on us, we have a duty and an obligation to fight back, and jury nullification is a weapon we can use.
Jury nullification is one of the options that you're saying we as American citizens can use in helping legalize marijuana.
Yes, exactly. There's an organization out there called the Fully Informed Jury Association. Their mission is to help enlighten jurors or potential jurors to the issue, the doctrine of jury nullification. And that's what I would ask your public to do, to participate in just informing the public of their right, their ability to utilize jury nullification, both as a defendant fighting charges and as a juror trying to stop the tyranny of government.
In the social networking era, Twitter is #1. Give me more information on your Twitter accounts.
To your listeners, my Twitter account, at NJ Weedman, that's one. And the other one that I really use is at Weedmobile, without the E. Weedmobile, without the E on the end. That's basically, as I go across the country, those are the two that I'm going to be tweeting.
Thank you again, NJ Weedman, for connecting with me here on Ivory Female Reggae Radio. Now, please do give me your last words.
This is the New Jersey Weedman. I want you to check me out at njweedman.com. And I want you to know that I stand for the legalization of marijuana, and I want you to get up and support the issue of legalizing marijuana.
Robert Edward Fortune, a.k.a. NJ Weedman, has been fighting for the legalization of marijuana since the early 90s, fighting case after case due to his medical marijuana use and possessions. As a Rastafarian and a medical marijuana patient, he has accomplished to be a legal grower and a dispensary owner in California. Since marijuana is a Scheduled I drug, which means there's no medical purpose, this term brings more felonies to innocent medical marijuana users. Now, in 2012, Robert Edward Fortune is going to trial for 1 pound of medical marijuana, equivalent to 1 carton of the deadly cigarettes that are sold legally. Welcome back to Ivory Female Reggae Radio, NJ Weedman. I'm very glad to have you on air for a second interview. Now, give me a little 411 on how this trial came about.
Going home to visit, it was Easter weekend. My kids were off for a week for spring break, so I was going home for basically maybe 10 days or so, and I decided to bring some marijuana with me, and I brought a pound of marijuana with me. I had some marijuana in New Jersey, at my house in New Jersey, but basically I was replenishing my stash. I probably would have, I would have smoked it, used it. I probably would have even cooked some. But basically I was going to leave some there as my stash for the next time I visit. Well, what happened was I was leaving. I got a couple miles down the road, and a New Jersey state trooper pulled up alongside of me at a light. We looked at each other, and, I knew I was getting pulled over when we looked at each other. But anyway, I took my foot off the brake, and my front tires went over the white line at the light, and when the light turned green, he slid in behind me and pulled me over down the road and basically said that I had disregarded a traffic signal because my tires were over the white line. Certainly he asked to search the car. I said no, but eventually he got a search warrant anyway. Got charged with possession and possession with intent to distribute. Yep, anything over 50 grams, that's what they'll charge you with, possession with intent to distribute. And the thing is, I got arrested on April 1st, April Fool's Day, actually, 2010. It was 3 months after New Jersey passed its own medical marijuana bill. In New Jersey, it was passed on January 18th, 2010, which, to me, that's 3 months after New Jersey recognized marijuana had medicinal value. I get arrested, and I got charged under the state's criminal statute that says marijuana has no medicinal value and is therefore illegal. Throughout my case, I've been trying to bring in the issue of medical use. The prosecutor in the case, Mr. Luciano, and the judge in the case have basically argued and forbidden me from bringing up the New Jersey medical marijuana bill, which was made into law prior to me being arrested, but they claim that it didn't go into effect yet, and what I was doing had nothing to do with medical use.
NJ Weedman, everybody has the right to do what you're doing, and that is smoking marijuana for medical use. And in California, you had your own dispensary. What you're doing there, you're doing legal, and you made it a point to do it legal, and you come in over there, there's no intent in it, because you have it in California to do.
Right. That's part of my argument that, here I am in California. I have a doctor's note from a doctor, and I have a state-issued medical marijuana card. And then I travel to New Jersey, and they're not respecting it, which I think is wrong. Like, why should we have 50 different rules and 50 different methods of treatment? Like if I was traveling across the country with a prescription for hydrocodone or Zoloft or Paxil or any of those drugs, at every state border, I don't have to switch medicines or get a new prescription from a doctor issued there or anything like that. And I think the same thing should be with marijuana. If I was a medical marijuana patient in California and I visit New Jersey, I have my card and everything, I should be allowed to bring my medicine with me, just like if I had chosen to use hydrocodone or any of those other.
Which kills you, which gives you the worst side effects, which makes you sick.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. So my question is about your trip now from beginning from California. How was your trip across the nation? Where'd you hit and who did you meet along the way?
You know, for your listeners, a recap. When I realized I had to go to trial, my trial was supposed to start on April 10th of 2012 this year. And on March 20th, I drove my van, my Weedmobile, from California to New Jersey. And along the way, I stopped in Las Vegas. I met up with people in Las Vegas. The intent of my trip was to bring publicity to this trial, to talk about the issue of jury nullification, which I'll get into in a minute. But when I stopped in Las Vegas, I was like, stop, and I met up with Hemp TV and a group called Los Marijuanos. Then the next day, we went to, 2 days later, we went to Denver and went to Cannabis Health News and Cannabis Radio, which are both located in Denver. And again, we did radio interviews. We talked about, you know, the issue of marijuana, legalization, medical use of marijuana, and again, the cause of the doctrine of jury nullification. And what that is, real short, is a jury is empowered to judge a law, and jury is empowered to render a verdict, you know, any way it wants to. A jury can decide to utilize its conscience or to look at a law as being unjust or misapplied and say whatever it wants. And in my case, I'm arguing that technically in New Jersey, laws are that what I was doing was illegal, but I think the laws are unjust and misapplied, and I'm advocating for the jury to disregard the law and say not guilty. So, which is called jury nullification. So as I drove across the country, I went to, like I said, Las Vegas, I hit Denver, I went to Chicago, went to Des Moines, Iowa, I did a radio station in Cincinnati also. I went to Kent State University in Ohio, met with people there. Carlisle, Pennsylvania, we met some people in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And eventually got to New Jersey. And the New Jersey press, they did cover my whole trip across the country. We did talk about jury nullification, and it worked. The press here in New Jersey, in covering my case, has constantly mentioned jury nullification. I'm pretty sure any juror who's, you know, at least a little bit in tune with what's going on in the local media has read about me, read about my advocation of jury nullification as a defense. And, I think I've successfully polluted the jury pool over the last couple of years. You know, I've been an activist for a long time, but this particular news coverage that I'm getting right now for the trial has gotten a lot of publicity, and especially about jury nullification.
Speaking about being publicized, how is New Jersey media treating you?
The newspapers in this area, I've been front page of several newspapers several times. I've basically been here about a month now, because when I got here, my trial was supposed to start, like I said, on April 10th. There was a couple stories prior to April 10th, and then on April 10th, the trial date got postponed till May the 1st. Yes, and we've had several days of testimony. We've had our opening statements. The prosecution has put on its case. Obviously, we picked the jury also on the first day. Actually, it took 2 days to pick the jury. Today is Sunday. Monday, there's no trial. But then Tuesday is my turn to put on my, and I believe it's just going to be one day. My case is pretty simple. It's 2 expert witnesses, and then I'm ready for the jury to decide. So the jury will probably get the case Tuesday evening, and I hope they have a quick return. If not, we'll come back on Wednesday, and we'll come back every day until they do come back with a jury decision. And, you know, obviously I hope for a not guilty verdict and to be heading back to California at the end of the week.
I want to hear you being not guilty, most definitely, and we want you back here in California soon. Now, talking about the trial, how was the jury chosen on the first day?
On the first day, several jurors instantly just wanted to get off the case, you know. But as as they started realizing what the case was about, I think several of them wanted to stay on the case. For instance, the judge was asking a couple of questions I think were red herrings. One of the questions the judge was asking each member of the jury was, how do you feel about the war on drugs, and what's your opinion on the war on drugs, and this, that, and the other? Well, the first few, if they said anything in favor of ending the war on drugs or doing something different, the judge removed them, sent them about their business. And then the ones who were evasive and didn't really say anything, said they didn't, they really hadn't considered it and things like that, they stayed. So what happened, I started noticing is the first few were answering them, and like I said, they were getting kicked off. Then it seemed amazing that then all of a sudden the rest of the people, as they were being asked the questions, they had no answers. They had, they weren't being, like you can tell they're being evasive, so they could stay on the jury. But anyway, we went through the whole jury pool that day. I think I used 8 of my challenges to kick off a couple people. The prosecution used about 5, but we went through the whole 60 people, and at the in the afternoon we ran out of jurors to pick, and we didn't have a full jury yet. So what happened is the next day we had to bring in more jurors. But that evening, a bunch of newspapers all wrote about it. There was more reporters in there than there were spectators, actually. So the next day, all the newspapers had ran stories about the case, and jury selection began and all that. So when the next jury pool came in, I can tell just by looking at them, and they were, some people smiled at me and everything. They all knew what this case was about. This is the Weed Man case. And when the judge asked this pool if who had something to do and this and the other, nobody raised their hand. When he started trying to weed out people, no one gave good answers. So I thought that was amazing. Like, these people want to be on the jury, which to me is like they want to make a statement. Like my press has been very pro me, lean towards me.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of people who think marijuana should be legal. More than 50% of people think that marijuana should be legal anyway. Opinion poll after opinion poll says that.
Exactly.
And I believe that that's what happened. These members of the jury, they have those opinions. They kept them to themselves. They know to keep them to themselves, so they stay on the jury. And I believe that I have a jury packed with sympathizers. And I have a pot dar, a weed dar, whatever you want to say. How I could tell a lot of times who smokes weed. And like, people look at me. I look like the stereotypical marijuana user to a lot of people. So I get that friendly look sometimes, or the little smile, or the body language, like that they're not offended at me, And so, I was using it as I was picking my jury. And I think I packed the jury with sympathizers. I can't tell for sure how many of them smoke, but I know which ones looked at me favorably. And as the case has been going, I'm getting smiles, I'm getting looks as questions are asked. The jurors are looking at me. I've gotten a few smiles here, there, and the other. Even at lunchtime, we're not allowed to talk to each other. But I noticed when I went out on lunch, several of the jurors, watched what I was doing and smiled at me from a distance,
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure, and I only need one, to hang the jury. I believe I might get a total, I think I'm going to get a total acquittal. I think it depends on who the jury foreman is, but I really think that they're going to say, I'm not putting this guy in prison. And that was jury selection. But the first day of the trial, as the prosecution gave his opening statement, and I'm allowed to give my opening statement. So the prosecution gives his opening statements, and it was about 10 minutes long, but I think he made a huge mistake, and I'm thanking him for it. But as the prosecutor started talking about my charges and this, that, and the other, he said that I was going to try to distort them and try to confuse them with this medical marijuana that, as far as the state is concerned, marijuana is illegal. You can't have it. Mr. Fortune's going to give you a song and a dance about marijuana. And he called me a charlatan. He said that I was a charlatan, a wolf in hemp clothing. And first of all, it was insulting to call me a charlatan, and to try to make a little smart remark, with the whole hemp thing, saying I'm a wolf in hemp clothing. I think it took some of the jurors back too. I saw them kind of look at him like, whoa, you attacked him like that. But anyway, he gave a 5-minute opening statement. about nothing. Basically painted me up like I was some type of drug dealer and this and that and the other, and disparaged me. That's all he did. That's all he could do. It was all negative.
Exactly.
And then I get up there when it's my turn. Of course, I make a point to mention that he called me a charlatan. I told them that I'm not a charlatan. For one thing, what I am is a medical marijuana patient, and I instantly pulled out my an X-ray. He kind of changed what my opening statement was going to be. To be honest with you, since he attacked me like that, I kind of changed the beginning, right? And then, like I said, I had to thank him later. He made it easy for me, and now I'm just defending myself over what he said. And like I said, right away, I pull out my X-rays. For your listeners, I get my medical condition. I have a condition that it's basically bone tumors is what I get. And right now I have a big one that's been growing for the last 2 years in my right leg. I have one in my left shoulder and two in my right shoulder also that aren't that painful. The one in my leg is painful and it's gotten very big. It's actually at the point it has to be taken out. But this condition is no way like I can't fake it. So that's
Exactly.
what I showed. That's what I showed the juries. Like here's my X-ray. Like, look at this big tumor right here on my X-ray. I said, I'm no charlatan. He said I was going to do a song and a dance. I said, you know what? The song I'd sing, if I was allowed to sing a song, I'd sing Bob Marley's Legalize. And as far as the dance, I can't dance right now because of this tumor in my leg. Charlatan. And I kept bringing up the point that he called me a charlatan, like I was offended at. I think some members of the jury were offended at, too, especially after I showed them the X-ray. I showed them the scar in my leg from having a tumor taken out a few years ago. I described how painful that was. I showed them a scar on my hip from having surgery on my hip, a few years ago also. I can't fake this.
Exactly.
There's no way I could fake this. And this is what I was bringing up. He's calling me a charlatan. It was really offensive. And, the next day, that's what ran in the papers. All the papers wrote that he called me a charlatan. And then I came back with the whole, I'm a legitimate medical marijuana patient. And, the prosecutor also got very upset that at our lunch break, I went and called a radio station. It's a radio station in New Jersey called 101.5 FM. It's the biggest talk show station in the state. It talks about politics and this, that, and the other. And I gave an interview in between, at lunchtime, and he listened to it too. I actually told the prosecutor that I was going to give that interview. When I came back in, he was mad. He was upset. He told the judge about it and asked the judge to issue a gag order so that I can't talk to the press. The judge refused to issue a gag order on me, but he did instruct the jurors that they're supposed to not listen to the news, not read the newspapers, and not to go on the internet researching this case.
So during your trial in court, everything is being represented to your jurors, right?
Here's the deal. Remember I said that the judge and the prosecutor successfully argued that I cannot bring up the fact that New Jersey has a medical marijuana bill, a law in place, which is crazy. Like, that is what I'm arguing my defense is. And they're saying, so the jury legally is not being told that that there is a medical marijuana law in place. Now, I personally think that most of these people already know that there is one. And then if they're reading the paper the next day or that night or going online, they're going to read it right in the paper. But I think the vast majority of people on the jury are going to look and say, you know what, the law's wrong. First of all, there is a law. They're not trying to tell us about it in this case, but we already know that there is a law and that would protect him. And, it's obvious then the law that he's being charged under is wrong.
That's exactly what I want to hear from this case. Now, who else was involved in this trial?
It was ridiculous, to be honest with you. When the state brought up its expert witness, his expert was an ex-state police officer. He was a prosecutor. And he said that in his experience, anyone with a pound of weed was selling it, and he started bringing up all kinds of gang this and gang that, and I'm like, I wanted to yell, like, dude, like, you're like mixing apples and oranges. I'm not any of those things. But this is how he was describing people with a pound of marijuana. I've been putting everything on my website, njweedman.com. My website right now is set up with different information about jury nullification, what a juror can do, and these newspaper stories and my condition, and I'm hoping that a juror this weekend goes in there and plays on my website, reads it. I actually hope that. Whether that's legal or not, that's my hope. My website is set up so that any juror pops in will totally understand
Well, yeah.
What this case really is about, as opposed to being snowed over by the prosecution and the judge.
Another question of mine, do you believe the judge and prosecutor are working together?
Yes. I don't mean like the judge is doing something like illegal collusion with him, but we know the prosecutor doesn't want to hear anything about this medical issue. He's there trying to put me in prison, and the judge is being he doesn't want to be that guy that breaks it open in New Jersey. So they are on the same side. Just the fact that he ruled that I can't talk about the New Jersey Medical Marijuana Act, is like crazy. Everybody in the state already knows that, but we're not allowed to talk about it.
When the law is supposed to be justified, that seems to me very unjust. But of course, when you do win this case, what are your plans?
The plan off the top will be to just restart my life.
Do you have any plans on opening up a new dispensary in California?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Actually, I even have a building in mind. My paperwork is still good from the Liberty Bell Temple. I'm looking at a building down around Leimert Park, right off of Crenshaw Boulevard. And I just need a little seed money. And actually, I have an investor who hey, if I get off this case, he's going to help me. Hopefully, I don't have any more fights. But if I'm presented with a fight, I'm not that guy that turns the cheek. I always fight back.
What kind of issues do you think will occur when you win this case?
Well, I believe right here in New Jersey, if I'm totally acquitted, that there is going to be issues with changing the law. For instance, New Jersey's law, their medical marijuana law that I'm not allowed to talk about, it doesn't recognize other states' medical cards. That's one of the reasons why the judge justified not allowing me to talk about it, because he says that I had no defense in New Jersey because I wasn't prescribed a card in New Jersey. But anyway, I think at some point, they're going to have to amend that. They're going to have to change that. There are certain other aspects of the law, just an amount of weight. In New Jersey, you're only allowed to have 2 ounces, and you're only allowed, and that's per month. Some people can smoke a 1/4 ounce a day. And I'm one of those people.
Exactly.
I could smoke 8-9 joints a day. So 2 ounces wouldn't last me a week.
Exactly.
It wouldn't. It might last 4 days, but I doubt it really lasts 4 days. And that's a major flaw in New Jersey's law. Even the federal system. A lot of people don't realize it, but there is a federal medical marijuana compassionate act. It's limited. They won't let anybody else in the program. But the people that are in the program and have been in the program since the 80s, they get 300 joints a month.
Wow.
300 joints is about 3/4 of a pound. It's if you use the rule that each joint is a gram, you're talking 300 something grams. That is definitely they're counting on 10 joints a day. That's what the federal government is saying. 10 joints a day. Which is really crazy.
The laws in our nation are crooked at times, but I hope that your case will be justified and set you free. Thank you again, N.J. Weedman, for being part of my show with this second interview, and I will be talking to you after this trial is over. Any last words?
This is Edward N.J. Weedman Fortune, and I'm listening to Irie Be Mine Radio.